Deuteronomy 25, one of my favorite chapters because there are a couple verses from here that were read by my best man at a wedding reception. And I just want to say to my friend Hank, thank you so much for giving us, reminding Bridget and I of this advice. I've done well to not get into a fight, and Bridget's done well not to fall into the threat of verses 11 and 12. You can read those for yourself. And yes, my best man read those at our wedding. The reception ceremony would have been a little more awkward. Public discipline is mentioned in this chapter. Again, this is an honor shame culture, which is a little different dynamic than what our culture in the West, or at least Western Canada, or Western societies worked under, though a lot of cultures to this day still function in that honor and shame. Basically, it's if your actions bring shame on your family, on your community, on your town, that was horrible. That's that's being a bad person. Wasn't so much about your individual kind of character. It was how it reflected then on your parents or your clan or your town. And so that's public discipline was that was the threat there was you're going to be shown to be bringing shame on your community by your actions. So again, a little different than how we would necessarily do things or think things should be done today. Then we have this verse about ox and grain and should be fed. It really is about equity for services rendered. If someone is doing something for you, and that's their profession, their thing, then they should be compensated. I mean, people should be receive a fair wage for the work that they do. Paul uses this in the New Testament to argue for the principle those involved in serving a church should receive benefit. Just as kind of where you may have heard this I think this is the New Testament that's there. Continuing the family line is mentioned. Again, lineage is tied to the land under this covenant. And so continuing the family line means that land then is staying in the clan, staying in the family. And that's, again, how provision for the family is going to happen through having descendants. And so there was shame for those that weren't having kids, and we see this in different ways later on in the scripture, right? I mean, with Zechariah and Elizabeth, there was a thing where they were kind of publicly embarrassed or ashamed that something maybe must have been wrong with them because they didn't have any kids. It was kind of viewed as punishment. Now, we don't have that same kind of dynamic in culture today, though I know there are some families that, there's pressure put on as soon as a couple gets married. When are you going to have kids? When are you going to have grandkids? It's a different kind of pressure because it's not tied to land and inheritance and all of those things. But, it's a thing. I think we want to be careful with that. Integrity in dealings is dealt with in this chapter. And this reminder to destroy the Amalekites. Israel never really did. In fact, when we get to 1 Samuel, we'll see that Saul failing to follow through with this command was part of the reason why he was removed by God from leadership. Again, the Amalekites were their culture was one that was horrific in ways. And so God was, as punishment, as judgment, looking to root them out and to basically, and here's the thing, it's not so much about destroying the people, it's that culture. It's what is promoting violence and hostility and abuse and removing that. And this is a cycle we see constantly in the scriptures where violent, murderous empires, nations, cultures are going to arise or kind of gain their prominence, and then they fall. But then another one comes, and the cycle repeats and repeats and repeats. And God is there. God promises he will not let a violent, murderous empire last forever. it's going to fall. And so this is just part of that cycle. We just need to keep that in mind. Again, there's lots of laws here, lots of different rules, and a lot of kind of random stuff um, from our perspective. And so I just want to use today's devotional just as this reminder. We're called to read and understand the Bible in community. Again, I mentioned just a day or two before, we live in an individualistic society. We're kind of almost been trained in a way to, you read your Bible by yourself, you and God, and as though that's how God has designed us to understand the scriptures. That's hardly ever been in the history of the church how God has, well, how the church has done it. And it's not how God calls us to. Always in the scriptures, we see the call to understand the scriptures together. That's why I encourage you to ask questions. That's why I read commentaries and things, because I'm reading in community with others. That's why I have conversations at times with others, and just, what does this mean? And how do we follow Jesus in this? And how do we respond to this? I mean, I talk with other pastors at times, or whoever may be just helping me to learn. We're called to read the Bible, to understand it, and apply it in community. And so, again, who's your reading buddy? Who do you talk to about what God is saying to you, or what you're reading or understanding, the questions you have? We need to be reading in community. And as you do that, God will bless us. And God, He promises to keep us. God is looking to make His face to shine upon us, because God is gracious. May you experience His grace today. God bless.